I recently came across a thoughtful comment on LinkedIn that brought up a lot of interesting points on IUL. The broad theme of the comment seemed to be that IUL has too many variables to be dependable. In today's video, I'll be responding to each of those points one by one. For starters, the poster is in the life insurance industry, so I can only assume that he likes permanent life insurance, but is just not partial to Index Universal Life for the variety of reasons listed in his post. Okay, let's dive into his comment. Here's his first point. IUL conceptually seems to make sense. The only issue I have with it is way too many uncontrollable variables, non-guaranteed elements. This just makes it too complex to explain to the clients without losing them. Okay, for starters, let's talk about what the IUL is designed conceptually to do. It's designed to give you exposure to the stock market up to a cap without market risk. In other words, they're guaranteeing you won't lose money in the market. I've long stated that this means that you can likely expect between 5 and 7% net of fees over the life of the program. So, rarely a home run, but plenty of singles and doubles. The IUL is not a stock market alternative, it is a bond alternative. Okay, now that we've defined what the IUL is designed to do from a conceptual standpoint, let's address the poster's initial question. Does the IUL have too many non-guaranteed elements, and do those non-guaranteed elements make it difficult for the client to understand? A lot of that, I suppose, depends upon the financial advisor who's explaining the policy. It also depends upon the company you're using, because some companies have much more guaranteed elements than others. Okay, let's talk about one of the main IUL companies I use, and let's list the guaranteed elements versus the non-guaranteed elements. First, the guaranteed elements. The IUL I prefer has 4 fees, all of which are broken out on the illustration. The first 3 are all guaranteed. They are as follows: the premium charge, the policy fee, and the per unit charge. Per the contract, none of those can be changed. No surprises there. The 4th fee is the cost of insurance. This is not guaranteed, and for good reason. Insurance companies reserve the right to change this fee based on mortality rates across the general population. Should people begin dying at a much more accelerated rate, say a pandemic or World War III, then they would increase those expenses to make sure they honor all of their death benefit commitments. I would encourage you to research your IUL company and determine if they've ever had to revert to these types of expenses in the history of their company. That could be a red flag. Okay, let's keep going. 4 factors I think that are critical for IUL are index used, cap rate, crediting method, and crediting timing. If I am not mistaken, the company can change the index and cap rates, which makes the illustration overly simplified to use it as a guideline. Okay, the poster rightly points out that IUL's growth is determined by a number of variables. First, the index used. This can either be a well-known index like the S&P 500, or it can be an engineered index. The latter is a bit less reliable because some companies will reverse engineer an index to make the likelihood of future growth seem perhaps more likely than it really is. Many people conflate reverse engineered returns with actual historical returns. Not the same thing. For example, the story may go something like this. Had this engineered index been around 20 years ago, you would have averaged 12% per year. Well, if this seems a bit misleading, I can assure you it is. I would only put faith in an engineered index if it actually has the track record to back it up. And yes, some engineered indexes have been around for plenty of time and have reliable historical track records. Next, the cap rate. This is generally determined by the company's options budget, which is determined by interest rates and, to some extent, volatility in the market. This is generally set at 3 or 4%. It's interesting to note that none of the companies I use lower their caps to anywhere near this level, even when interest rates were at or near 0 over a protracted period of time. Okay, now the crediting method. This can either be an uncapped index or a capped index. On the face of it, most people would choose the uncapped index because, hey, why cap your growth if you don't really have to? The truth is that the uncapped indexes have stipulations that allow them to adjust the percentage of stocks versus bonds in the index to which the cash value is linked. So in volatile times, they may disproportionately allocate money towards bonds. So even though you have quote-unquote uncapped growth, that uncapped growth might be on an index that consists primarily of low-yielding bonds. So historically, I've been a fan of capped indexes because it's a little more what you see is what you get. Okay, finally, the credit timing. There are generally 2 main time periods over which credits are given, and that's annual, point-to-point, or monthly point-to-point. Here, the company will either link the growth of your cash value to the upward movement of an index over a monthly time segment or over a yearly time frame. Let's keep reading. Furthermore, more than relying on back-tested results, I would like to see actual performance. None of the companies share historical cap rates. Client is more than likely to walk away with what sticks, and that will be the illustration regardless of what we tell them. The alternative is to simplify the message, which then tends to convey half-truths. So the poster rightly says he doesn't want to rely on the back-tested results when basing his decision on whether or not to use the IUL. He wants to see actual results. That said, I'd like to show you 3 different real-world results from 3 different companies and let you be the judge of how IULs with top-rated companies have fared historically. As a reminder, I don't mention specific companies on this channel, so for today's video, I'll simply be referring to them as companies A, B, and C. The first example is from a company whose IUL dates back to 2006. You'll notice that this particular generation of IUL was illustrated at 8%, and here we are nearly 17 years later, through all of the vicissitudes of the markets and interest rates, and it still managed to keep pace with that original projection. In other words, the maximum illustrated rate was 8%, and it delivered roughly 8%. I'd say these are reliable historical returns. The second set of historical returns comes from company B. This graphic shows every average rate of return from every generation of IULs since that same year, 2006. So it's not giving you just one data point. It's giving you 14 different data points on 14 different generations of IUL policies. They then averaged every single one of those policies' track records together and showed a return of just over 7%. With the last company, we'll call them company C, I'm going to be showing you an actual policy that goes all the way back to September of 2009. So once again, we've endured the ups and downs in the market and historically low levels of interest rates, and what we see is that this policyholder actually averaged 8.03% over that time frame. So I've given you 3 different companies, all of which have fallen very comfortably within a 6 to 8% range. When you subtract the 1% in fees or so over the life of the program, you'll be netting 5 to 7% over that time frame. This is the range of returns you should be able to expect from a top-rated carrier. All right, let's take a look at his final thought. Added to this is the challenge of choosing the right company. There are way too many companies in this space. I am yet to see IUL experts be consistent in their claim about the top 3 to 5 companies for IUL and why. Folks, over the last 15 years, I've actually spent a fair amount of time analyzing all of the different variables you should consider when evaluating an IUL. In fact, I frequently make the case that an IUL is a bit like getting married. It only really works if you keep it until death do you part. And the IUL is, in fact, a long-term proposition, so you should have a laundry list of things that you're looking for before taking the leap. There's nothing worse than getting 10 years into your IUL, realize it has some sort of fatal flaw or ticking time bomb, and then have to undergo an expensive and painful IUL divorce. I'd recommend you take a look at my best-selling book, Look Before You LERP, to understand precisely the types of things you should be looking for in a lifelong IUL partner. By the way, I've scoured the IUL marketplace and have found only 2 IULs that line up in every particular. In short, there are a lot of IULs in the marketplace that have too many variables that can be changed at the company's leisure. And believe me, if you give them 30 to 50 years to make up their minds on which variables they want to change, sooner or later, they'll change them and it won't be in your favor. It's a little like having their fox in your chicken coop. You want to have an IUL that can change as few of those variables as possible. You want as many guarantees as you can possibly get. And finally, you want to find a company that has a history of honoring their promises. That means maintaining high levels of cap rates and giving their policyholders returns that align with what their illustrations are projecting. Folks, in the next 10 years, I'm looking to put 100,000 Americans on the road to the 0% tax bracket. If you'd like some help getting on the road to a tax-free retirement, be sure to check out my tax-free toolkit. You can download it for free at taxfreetoolkit.com. If you're a financial professional and want to learn how to become a certified Power Zero advisor, head over to powerzero.com and opt into my free 3-part video series. By the way, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop them into the comment section below. I respond to every single one of them personally. And don't forget to click like, subscribe, and the bell so you never miss a video. This is David McKnight. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.